My name is David. I was 34, newly divorced, and driving Route 66 to clear my head. I'm not saying I was looking for something weird, but I found it. The Desert Rose Motel appeared after 8 hours of Arizona desert driving. My Honda's AC had died somewhere past Flagstaff, and the pink neon promising air conditioning looked like salvation. The parking lot held maybe 6 cars scattered across faded white lines. The desk clerk was a thin woman in her 60s who barely looked up from her crossword puzzle. The lobby smelled like old coffee and pine sol. Room 12, she said, sliding a physical key across the cracked counter. Checkout's at 11. Room 12 was exactly what you'd expect for $40 a night. Generic Southwest decor, a bed that sagged in the middle, and that lingering cigarette smell masked by industrial air freshener. But the AC worked, and that's all I cared about. I ordered pizza delivery and settled in with a paperback thriller. The ancient TV took 3 tries to turn on, but the local news was decent background noise. That's when I first heard the footsteps above me. Not unusual in itself, motels have thin walls and floors. But these footsteps had a very specific rhythm. 3 quick steps, pause, 3 more steps, pause. Like someone pacing in an extremely small space. The pattern continued for nearly an hour. I tried turning up the TV volume, but the footsteps seemed to adjust accordingly, always just audible enough to be noticeable. The sound was hollow, like leather soles on bare wood. Sometimes there'd be a slight scraping noise, as if the person was dragging something across the floor. Around midnight, they stopped completely. Sleep came in fragments. I kept waking to small sounds, the ice machine cycling, distant car doors, wind against my window. But no more footsteps. When I finally drifted off around 3 a.m., I dreamed about someone pacing endlessly in circles, unable to stop. The next morning, I mentioned it casually to the desk clerk while checking out. She was working on a different crossword, wearing reading glasses this time. The people upstairs were pretty active last night. She looked at me strangely, her pen hovering over the puzzle. Upstairs, room 22, I assume. Directly above me, her expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. Confusion mixed with what looked like concern. Son, this is a single-story motel. Has been since we opened in 1962. I turned toward room 12, counting the doors, looking up at the roofline. She was absolutely right. The Desert Rose Motel was completely flat. No second story anywhere. Maybe it was next door then, I said weakly, though even as I said it, I knew it didn't make sense. Room 11's been empty all week. Room 13's got an elderly couple from Missouri. They were asleep by 9:30. I saw them turn their lights off myself. I loaded my car in silence, trying to rationalize what I'd heard. Maybe the roof settling from temperature changes. Maybe sound traveling from another building. Maybe divorce stress making me imagine things. But as I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror one final time. For just a moment, I could swear I saw a figure standing in the window of a second-story room that couldn't exist. The figure raised its hand. 3 quick waves goodbye. Pause. 3 more waves. I didn't stop driving until I reached Albuquerque. My name is Marcus, and I'm a freelance photographer specializing in disappearing Americana. The assignment for Southwest Living magazine seems straightforward enough to document the remaining vintage motels along Route 66 before they vanished entirely. The Atomic Age Motor Lodge in rural New Mexico caught my attention immediately. Built in 1957, it embodied the space-age optimism of the era. Boomerang-shaped architecture, starburst decorative elements, and a rocket ship pointing skyward above the office entrance. The owner, Miguel Santos, was in his 70s and happy to discuss the motel's history.
Yeah, those were the days. This place has seen a lot of stories, a lot of travelers passing through.
While I photographed the exterior in golden evening light. His family had bought the place in the early 1980s from the original builder's estate. The builder was William Hoffman, Miguel said, polishing his glasses. Big dreams about the future. Atomic power, space travel, all that 50s optimism. This was supposed to be the first in a chain of atomic-themed motels. What happened to him? Disappeared in 1963. Just vanished one night. Left everything behind: clothes, car, even his wallet. Police never figured it out. I booked room 7 for the night, facing the office for morning interior shots. The room was a pristine time capsule with built-in atomic-age furniture and curtains printed with boomerangs and starbursts. After dinner at a truck stop down the highway, I returned to edit photos on my laptop. Around 2 a.m., I noticed something odd in one of my exterior shots. Room 3, 2 doors down, had a light on, but Miguel had said I was the only guest. I zoomed in on the image. Warm yellow light, like an old incandescent bulb. A shadow moving behind the curtains, human-shaped, pacing back and forth. I walked to room 3. The window was completely dark. No light, no movement. I peered through a gap in the curtains, but the room appeared empty. Back on my laptop, the light was still there in the digital file, clear and undeniable. The metadata showed 7:47 p.m. But the next photo, taken 30 seconds later, showed room 3 dark. I spent an hour reviewing every shot from that evening. Room 3 showed light in exactly 3 images spanning less than 2 minutes. In each photo, the shadow figure was in a different position. Sleep became impossible. I kept thinking about William Hoffman working late in room 3 that final night, planning motels that would never be built. At dawn, I set my camera on a tripod, programmed to photograph room 3 every minute for an hour. Most frames showed it dark and empty. But in 6 random images, warm light glowed behind those atomic print curtains. In the final frame, just as the sun crested the horizon, I saw him clearly. A man in a 1960s suit and thin tie, standing at the window, looking directly at my camera. His hand was raised, as if trying to tell me something. I checked out early, leaving Miguel a note about a family emergency. But I kept the photos. Later, when I called to thank Miguel, I mentioned the electricity in room 3. He was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, he finally said, room 3's been locked since we bought this place. The electricity to that wing was shut off last winter. My name is Robert, and pharmaceutical sales had kept me on the road for 15 years. At 42, I developed an appreciation for authentic roadside experiences over cookie-cutter chain hotels, even if it meant sacrificing modern amenities. The crossroads sat at the junction of Route 66 and State Highway 34 in eastern New Mexico, a classic 1940s motor court arranged in a horseshoe around a central courtyard. The neon sign flickered intermittently as I pulled into the gravel parking area.
Welcome, welcome. Please sign right in. We've got a nice room for you.
Tom Brennan, the owner, checked me in with genuine old-fashioned hospitality. My wife Carol and I bought this place 6 months ago, he said, extending a work-hardened hand. You picked a good night, clear skies for stargazing. Room 18 was comfortable with original knotty pine paneling and a window facing the highway. After reviewing client files for tomorrow's meetings in Amarillo, I stepped outside for fresh air. The desert night was remarkably quiet, just wind through sagebrush and the occasional distant rumble of a truck. That's when I noticed the hitchhiker. He stood perhaps 100 yards east of Motel, clearly visible under a highway light. Tall, maybe 6'2", wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. A canvas duffel bag sat at his feet, and his right arm extended in the classic hitchhiker pose. I watched for several minutes. No vehicles appeared on that stretch of highway. The soldier remained perfectly still, patient as a monument. The next morning at breakfast, I mentioned it to Tom over coffee and eggs. Saw a guy in uniform trying to catch a ride last night. Looked like he'd been waiting quite a while. Tom's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. What time was this? Maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock. He exchanged a look with Carol, who was behind the counter. Can you describe him? Tall, dark hair. Army uniform, though it was hard to see details. Had a duffel bag. Carol disappeared and returned with an old shoebox of photographs. Previous owner left these. Tell me if you see anyone familiar. Halfway through the stack, I found a group photo labeled USO Dance December 1943. In the back row stood the soldier I'd seen. Same height, same dark hair, same serious expression. James Morrison, Tom said quietly. Stationed at a base 50 miles from here during the war. Used to come to dances in our old ballroom. Killed in Italy, early 1944. Why doesn't anyone stop for him? Some have tried, but when they pull over, there's never anyone there. That evening, I went outside at 10:47 p.m. The figure appeared under the same light, materializing like he'd stepped from shadow. I got in my rental car and drove slowly toward him. In my headlights, he looked completely real young, hopeful, watching my approach with quiet anticipation. But as I pulled onto the shoulder directly beside him, he simply faded away. One moment solid, the next gone. I sat there for 20 minutes. The highway remained empty in both directions. Tom wasn't surprised the next morning. He's been waiting 79 years. Maybe he doesn't realize the war's over. Sometimes, driving late at night, I slow down for solitary figures by roadsides, just in case one of them is finally ready to go home.